So we're going to do my top 10 favorite books. I'm going to talk about them, tell you why I like them, kind of give you a little bit what they're about, tell you what I think the meaning behind them is, and we'll maybe look into the history of the biography of the authors. Some of my favorite books aren't in here because I wanted to have the hard copies of all of the ones that I was going to do. So there's a few that are missing that would have been in this list but aren't. Like Fight Club and Clockwork Orange would have been in there. Another one was Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. That one would have been in there too, but I wanted to have the hard copy of the book, and all of those I lent out to people, so I don't have the hard copy of them. But there's other ones that were more philosophy-based books and political ideology books, but which is mainly what I read. But I wanted to keep it to just straight narrative-based books mainly. There's only one in there. It doesn't really have that much of a narrative. Maybe two, but yeah. So those two would be Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley and Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. But I just really like those two books, so I wanted to put them in there. And I felt like it gave a little bit of a variety in books. So the first one we're going to start out with is The Wolf of Wall Street by Jordan Belfort. It's not really that much of a deep book at all. It's just really fun, you know. There's a lot more in this book than what was in the movie, if you ever watched the movie. The movie's really good too. It's directed by Martin Scorsese. I would suggest, if you don't read, actually to go and watch the movie. It's a fun movie. This book is really fun too. The whole time you're just gonna laugh the whole time reading it. The way he describes things, and just it's really well written too. But for his first book, and him just being a degenerate Wall Street artist. I mean, not artist. Wall Street broker. He really is a good writer, which is surprising. But yeah, there's not much to say about this book. There's some really funny parts in here. There's some stuff that are different from the book and the movie. Like the scene where he's on the boat, that doesn't happen in the book. The scene on the boat where he's like, these are fun coupons.
Pocket, look! A year's salary right here. What I call them? Fun coupons. See that? A fun coupon. Come on the sloop, John B.
You know, that doesn't happen in the book. Also, in the movie, it doesn't really show how bad his drug addiction actually was. In this, it talks about some crazy stuff that happened to him where he was hallucinating, basically. There's one part in the book where he loses a rock of coke, and he thinks that he loses a rock of coke at least, and he starts stabbing his couch, all the cushions in his couch, and starts ripping them open looking for the rock, and he doesn't find it, and then he sees some guy pop out of the TV, so he throws a knife. I'm fairly sure he throws a knife. He throws something at the TV, and it just shatters the fucking TV. And so it doesn't really, the movie doesn't get into how bad of a drug problem he really had. But yeah, and then it ends with him getting arrested and having to go to into rehab, and then he went to prison. And actually, the way that the reason why he wrote this book was because he was cellmates with Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong, and he was telling Tommy Chong all of his stories. And Tommy Chong was like, "Man, you gotta write a book about this. This is awesome. This is crazy." So he decided to start writing the book, and he started writing the book in prison, I'm fairly sure. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't put that into the movie, because that would have been kind of funny, having Tommy Chong at the end of the movie telling him that he should write a book about it. That would have been funny.
But my bunkmate was Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What a fucking sell that must have been.
It was great, by the way. It
That
was
would have been
hysterical.
so crazy.
That's how I started writing. I tell
bunkmates with
Tommy
Chong.
stories at night, and he's just rolling on the floor. And then the third night, he's like, "Dude, I thought you were making this shit up. My wife Googled you. It's all true." He goes, "You got to write a book." I'm like, "Really?" Like, I didn't think my life was that crazy, because it's like, did you think when you was your life? You don't think your life is. He's like, "Your life, I don't know. Really think my life's interesting?" It's like, my life, I don't know if it's that interesting. It's, it's wild, but he's like, "Dude, I'm Tommy Chong. I think your life is fucking crazy. You got to write a book." So that's how I started writing. But other than that, jail was very, for
your life is
me,
probably pretty fucking
I had it about as good as you can have it.
Yeah.
But jail sucks. I mean, it's still, I don't want to glamorize it in the sense that I wasn't happy to be there, but I certainly made the most of it in the sense that I had, I had people working for me in jail. Like, you pay people to be a butler, a fucking cook, a valet, and it's not expensive in there. You're helping everyone else out. But then again,
you gotta be.
I wonder how much money Jordan Belfort had after he was charged with all those charges, because I would assume that they seized a lot of his money, So I wonder how much money he had after he got charged. I don't know.
To be rolling there like that, you got money, so
yeah, but like, it doesn't take a lot of money to roll big in jail. Like, if you have like $300 a month, you're rolling big in jail. It's not like, you get it. It's not like that,
And do you pay them like outside the jail, or like inside? Like, does it go to their money outside the jail?
There's multiple ways. Sometimes you do it by just giving them stamps in jail. You can have, your friend, which is dangerous. Why Steve Madden got in trouble for this. So Steve Madden did extra time in jail because, like, for some stupid thing, like his assistant sent someone else in the jail money. You get it? And they got caught, and he did an extra 6, like, so fucking stupid. Like, he was just being generous. Like, some guy had no money, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, whatever, I'll give you a few $100,000. His assistant sends someone else money, and he had...
Is Steve Madden's the one who had a shoe company, right? Yeah, Steve Madden's a shoe company that they used to defraud a bunch of investors and stuff.
Doing 6 months extra.
So they tack on a lot of time for the smallest shit.
Smallest shit.
They can do anything. They just tack on fucking 6 months.
Well, I think with Steve's Mark, he didn't give him extra time. He didn't get extra time. He didn't get his deduction for good time and for going through what's called the drug program. It's something called RDAP, the Residential Drug Treatment Program. So what happens is, when you go to jail and you're an ex-addict, you can say, "Well, I was, doing what I did because of drugs." So they'll let you go through a program, and they'll reduce your sentence by 18 months. So I got sentenced to 4 years and did only 22 months, partially because of good time, good behavior, partially because of this RDAP program. Everybody goes through it, right? Everyone's suddenly a drug addict, right? I really was, right? But a lot of people just say, "Oh yeah, I'm a drug addict." They go through the program, get time off.
When you went to jail, how much did you have going into jail? And then when you came out, how much were you left with?
I had about maybe $500,000 to $1 million going in and zero coming out.
So you had to start fresh.
Start fresh. And I was so fucking happy to start fresh. I got to tell you, it was, looking back at it, there was something amazing about starting over, and it's, and I probably wasn't thinking that at the moment.
It is impressive that he was able to build that empire, even though he was cheating and defrauding people, and then afterwards he had nothing, got back out of jail, and then wrote a book. What was a best-selling book, and then now he's a multimillionaire again.
What was your highest net worth at one point?
Oh, what the?
Yeah, probably close to. I mean, if you take the stock of Steve Madden, in excess of $1 billion. Yeah, because Steve, when you look at
Yeah,
Steve
so
Madden,
he
saying
had
85% at one
he
point,
shouldn't have
and then
had
fully diluted.
he shouldn't have had stock in Steve Madden because he was the person who broke the stock, and so they pushed that stock onto a bunch of people saying buy this stock, buy this stock. So it boosted the price of the stock, and then and he had a bunch of money in that stock, but in a different person's name, I'm pretty sure. The second book that I have, this one actually is a lot more of a deep book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So there's two parts of the book. The first part describes his experience in the concentration camps because he was a Jew. And then the second part of the book is about his logotherapy that he came up with. Logotherapy is basically about how people need to find meaning in their life, and it talks about how even through suffering you can find meaning because it can build your character, basically. So even in suffering, you should be able to find meaning through that if there's no other route. And he said that there's two other ways of finding meaning. I think that there's more than that. Like, I think that the biggest way to find meaning in life is through God and through the Bible, in my opinion. But he talks about through like setting a path, like, of goals, that's a good way to find meaning, like setting up a business, having goals in your life and striving towards those goals is a way to find meaning. And then another one is through love, like loving another person is one of the other ways that you can find meaning in life. And in the book, it talks about how the people who died in the concentration camps were the ones who lost meaning in life. But one story I remember was there was this one guy who thought that they were going to get out and be liberated at a certain date. And so he was hyped about that date coming. And then once the date passed, he became very sick and eventually died. And so from that, he kind of discovered that through hope and meaning that you will be able to survive and you can push through. This is John Milton's Paradise Lost. It's a poem. It's epic poem, like how the Greek epics were written, but this was written in the 1600s, I'm fairly sure. A lot of people, I think, misread the book because there's a lot of people who use quotes from the book. They might not even know that they're quoting the book. Like I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven. That's a quote straight from this book that the devil says, and a lot of people who are like atheists and hate religion and stuff use that quote without knowing that this was a book that was made by a Christian. He was a Protestant Christian, and the book is basically about God sent Satan down, cast Satan out of heaven into hell, and they build up a kingdom in hell that they call Pandemonium, and that's actually where the word pandemonium comes from, is from this book. And then he has spite towards God, and he knows that he can't defeat God directly, so he goes after the new creation that he had just made, that God had just made, which is us humans, and he tainted humans by making them eat the forbidden fruit, the fruit of knowledge. And there's some weird stuff in the book, like there's one part where he disguises himself as a frog and sneaks into where Adam and Eve are sleeping, and he starts just whispering in Eve's ear about how she needs to eat the apple and everything, and then the other angels come down and see him there and kick the frog out. I don't think that they even knew that it was Satan. And then she wakes up the next morning and starts crying and tells Adam about a dream that she had where an angel, a really beautiful angel, was telling her to eat the fruit of knowledge. And he's like, don't worry, it's just a dream. And then it's a pretty interesting book. There's actually a second book to this. What is that book called? I think it's called Paradise Regained. I haven't read it. I haven't read that one. Yeah, it's called Paradise Regained. That one's about the devil trying to tempt Satan. A lot of people misread this and think that Satan is the good guy of the story, which I just think is a very stupid reading of the book. Because the good guy would not go and try to get an innocent being to be cast to hell just because he is like jealous or spiteful towards God. That's obviously a bad character. And just because they humanize Satan by like trying to, I feel like this whole book is John Milton trying to understand Satan. And a lot of people think that since he isn't just like an evil like person just to be evil, that he has like emotions and stuff, that they think that he's a good guy for some reason. And it doesn't make any sense. I feel like you have to be kind of a very sad person if you read this book and you think that Satan is the good guy, you know? Like, you have to be a very sad and spiteful person, in my opinion. If you want like a more in-depth video explaining Paradise Lost, I would say to go watch Wendigoon's video on it if you don't want to actually read the book. This is Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley is the author who wrote Brave New World, which is a really good novel about, it's like a dystopian future novel. I would say that you should read that book if you want to get into like a dystopian novel, because it's way closer to what we have nowadays than any other book that I've ever read. Like any of George Orwell's books, like 1984 and stuff, that's not really what we live in. We live in something that's way closer to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. But anyways, enough about Brave New World. This book is about how Aldous Huxley actually did mescaline in a research experiment about the effects of mescaline. And I don't know, there's not really much I can say about it except for that it was... Get out of here. There's not really much I can say about it except for that it's just a really interesting book. I mean, I wouldn't even call it a book. It's more of like an essay. It's only like 60 pages long. You can read it in like an hour or two if you want to. If you're a really fast reader, you could probably read it in like 30 minutes, but I'm not that fast of a reader, so. There's 3 parts. There's first part is his experience on mescaline. And then the second part is about like the history of like cultures using mescaline. And then the last part is about like how he thinks we can use mescaline going further on in the future. Yeah, that's basically what it is. The best part is definitely the first part where he talks about his experience on mescaline, because it's just, there's some parts that I was like, what? That shit's fucking crazy. But he took like a voice recorder when he was on mescaline, and he would talk into it and talk about the experience that he had on mescaline, so he could remember what to write about. Yeah, it's just a really good book. It's interesting. It's fun, kind of fun to read too. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. This was one of my favorite books for a really long time. Like, It's a really fun book to read. It's just, there's some stuff in here that's just fucking crazy and outlandish. Like the how he described some of his trips is funny. It's funny. I love the way that Hunter S. Thompson writes too. It sounds like a really smart degenerate talking, which he was, but also the book is just really cool. Like the pictures in the book are awesome. I really like the art that's in the book. I'll find one that I really like in here. Let's see. And then there's a few pages that when I first came across it, I was so confused because like, look at this. It just has like an ink blotch on it for no reason. I think he just thought it was cool. But I thought that that someone got ink on the book because I usually buy my books from thriftbook.com, so they're already pre-used, you know? But then I looked at it more and I was like, no, this was just put into the book for like aesthetic reasons. But anyways, the book is about Hunter S. Thompson, but he doesn't use his real name. He uses the name Raoul Duke, and because he was afraid that it would get him in trouble. And it's about him and his lawyer, Dr. Gonzo. And I don't even know if Dr. Gonzo is a real person or if it's just like another version of him, because there's no actual evidence throughout Hunter S. Thompson's life that Dr. Gonzo was a person in his life. So I don't know. But anyways, the book's about him and his lawyer going to Vegas to report on a motorcycle race called the Mint 400, and instead of going and reporting on the race, him and his lawyer decide to just go on like a drug-fueled like adventure in Las Vegas and try to find the American dream. And there's actually a really beautiful, beautifully written, I don't know what page it's on, like monologue where he talks about the American dream and the hippie culture of the 60s. I'll actually look that up. It's called the Wave Monologue. I'll actually play it for you, because it really does show how good of a writer Hunter S. Thompson actually is. I wonder
Strange memories on this nervous night in Las Vegas. Has it been 5 years? 6? It seems like a lifetime. The kind of peak
I should have went through
never
this
comes
book
again.
and marked out where it was.
San Francisco in the middle 60s was a very special time and place to be a part of. But no explanation. No mix of words or music or memories can touch that sense of knowing that you were there and alive in that corner of time in the world. Whatever it meant. There was madness in any direction, at any hour. You could strike sparks anywhere. There was a fantastic universal sense that wherever we were doing was right, that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle. That sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark. That place where the wave finally broke and rolled back.
See, he's a really good writer. Whoa, hopefully my stream doesn't get knocked down for that. Yeah, I should have just looked it up and then read it to you. But I wanted to show the clip from the movie too, because the movie is really close to the book. Like, it's one of the books that I've read and the movies that I've watched where they're very similar, and there's not much missing from the so if you don't want to read the book, you can basically watch the movie, and the movie is almost exactly the same as the book, except for there's one part that I know is missing from the movie, and that is, it's a really weird part of the book too. Man, I really should have went through and put bookmarks in the parts that I wanted to talk about. But anyways, the part of the book that's missing in the movie is actually in another movie about Hunter S. Thompson, where Hunter S. Thompson is played by what's his name? Why can't I think of the actor's name? Babe, what's the actor's name who plays who's from Groundhog Day? Bill Murray. Yeah. There's another movie about Hunter S. Thompson that Hunter S. Thompson is played by Bill Murray. It's fucking Bill Murray! Where the Buffalo Roam. In this movie, it actually has the part that's missing from Fear and Loathing. It's really weird how it's written, because it says that the author just forgot the whole thing that happened, so he just wrote down the monologue of a voice recorder that he had on his chest when they went through a drive-through to get a burger from this woman. And it's funny. That's the scene that's missing in the movie that I know for sure is missing in the movie. And it's in this movie. So if you watch both of the movies, you can basically watch the whole book in its entirety. Like, even most of the monologues and everything that's in this book is in the movie. So if you aren't a big reader and you still want to know about this book, you can just watch the movie, basically. It's a really good movie. I watched the movie first before I read the book. And the first time I watched the movie, actually, I was on mushrooms. And it was a crazy-ass movie to watch. I don't do those anymore, but I used to. A lot of people probably think that this book, like, romanticizes drug use, but I don't think it really does, because if you read the book, there's a lot of parts that are very dark in it, you know, like the part where Dr. Gonzo comes back and he brings what the fuck is it called? It's the thing that the QAnon says they're extracting from children. Adrenochrome. He brings adrenochrome, and Hunter S. Thompson takes the adrenochrome, and that part is really fucked up. Like, how he describes his trip is so fucking crazy. People who believe that a bunch of elites are taking adrenochrome, though, think that adrenochrome gives you youth, and in the book, it doesn't talk anything about that. It just says that it's a really psychoactive substance that's taken out of kids' brains. This isn't really a book. It's a poem. You can read it in like 15 to 30 minutes. It's called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and it's by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I really like this poem. It's my favorite poem. I actually found this poem because of a song that was made by Iron Maiden. It's a really long song. It's like a 15-minute long song. But and then I looked it up and found that it was based off of this poem. So I bought this book right here of the poem. It's really cool. It has a lot of interesting artwork in it. See, like that right there. And also, Samuel Taylor's like life story is just really interesting too, because he had a opioid addiction, and he was raised he was raised a Christian, and then kind of rejected Christianity in his youth, and he's one of the main people when you hear about the Romantics, like the Romantics poems and stuff. He's one of the main people who started it. They actually say that that John Milton, Paradise Lost, was one of the first romantic poems ever written, but I don't think it really was. I think that this was one of the first. But it's not really how most romantic poems are. The poem is basically about old seaman who comes across 3 guys who are going to a wedding, and he tells them that he needs to tell them a story. So the 2 of the guys leave and go to the wedding, and 1 guy stays to listen to this old man's story. And he tells them a story about when he was on a ship. They were in a storm, and when the storm was happening, or the albatross comes across them, and then brings the storm calm, and makes it so that wind is pushing against their sails, and that they start going back to shore. And then the ancient mariner decides to shoot the bird with the crossbow, and the bird dies, falls on the deck, and everything basically goes to hell after that. The wind stops going, so they're stuck in the middle of the sea. All of them are starving. Anyways, they take the bird and put it around his neck. And then next what happens is all of his crew members start to die except for him. And then he sees a ghost ship, basically, and it says that he can see the ribs of the ship. So it's basically a ship that has no outside. It wouldn't be able to float. So he sees the ribs of the ship, and there's 2 people on the ship. There is Death, that's a man, and then there's Life in Death, which is a woman. And they shoot dice for the mariner's soul. And Life in Death wins his soul. So then, after that, all of the men become alive again. All of the crew become alive again and start working the ship. And I think by life and death, they basically mean that he's gonna live forever, but wander the earth and have no meaning. Kind of like how the Bible says that Cain cursed to be after he murdered Abel. And so anyways, then there becomes a storm happens again. They're working the ship, and then a 3-headed serpent starts attacking the ship. And then he realizes that he needs to accept the beauty of the albatross. And then the albatross falls off of his neck. And I think that is him finding Christ again, because there's a lot of analogies towards Christianity. They use the number 3 a lot in the book. There's 7 parts to the poem. There's 7 parts to the poem, and there's just a lot of analogies towards Christianity in it. So I think that the whole book is talking about him rejecting Christ, and then him going through hell, and then him finding Christ again. And then the end of the book is him basically ending the story and telling the man that he had to tell him the story because he felt that he had a penance and he had to give penance to this man and tell the story, and he had this urge to always tell the story. And I think that that's why Samuel wrote this poem, was to tell the story of him coming back to Christ. But anyways, Samuel's life story is pretty cool too, because he was born a Christian, then he kind of went away from Christianity, got addicted to opioids, got addicted to opium, not like opioids that we have nowadays, but actual opium, and I'm pretty sure he got syphilis. I don't know for sure though. And then he came back to Christ though in the end of his life, and then he died not long after that. But it's just it's cool to relate the story of this poem back to his life, and that's why I kind of put this into my book list. This is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is the author who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He writes a lot of fictional books that are based on Christianity, but this one is not fictional. So he was actually given a part in the BBC broadcasting on the radio during World War II to talk about Christianity, and these are all a bunch of excerpts from his speeches they gave over the radio during World War II about Christianity, and he explains why Christianity is the one true religion. He does that through talking about how if there is morality, like true morality throughout civilizations, like to not kill, to not lie, then that morality has to come from something. And he thinks that he states that that something is God. And so yeah, it's really interesting. You'd have to read it. I don't really feel like getting completely into it, but it's a good book to read, especially if you're newly coming into Christianity. I think you should read that book. This is a really, really good book. It is Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. This is a Western, basically, that is about a character named the Kid. That's all that you know him by the name of until the last chapter. The last chapter is when he is grown up and he's called the Man. But we'll get into that in a little bit. The book goes through the Kid's life, where he joins a gang called the Glanton Gang, who are a bunch of people who go and scalp Native American savages, is what they called them. They would scalp their heads to get payment from the Mexican government for their scalps, because the Mexican government was paying people for their scalps. And in the book, the main antagonist is a man named the Judge, and the Judge is probably one of the weirdest and scariest antagonists you can probably think of. It's this giant man who is completely bald. He's 7 foot tall, completely bald, no skin, no eyebrows, no body hair at all, and he's albino. And he's just he's a genius. He basically anything that you can think of, he knows about it. There's one scene in the book where they're running from the Indians, and he's sitting there and he's gathering guano, bat shit basically. He's gathering guano, and they're sitting there, and he's not worried that they're getting chased by the Indians. And they get to the top of this hill, and he made gunpowder out of his own piss and guano, and then he lights it on fire and blows up the side of this hill and makes a rock slide down the hill, and it kills about all of them who are chasing after them. So that's just how smart he was. He's also just this evil person who, it alludes to it throughout the whole book that he rapes and kills children. Like, he carries around candy in his pocket to give to kids. And throughout the book, there's a bunch of kids that go missing and are found dead, like they were raped and killed. And then the end of the book is just so fucked up. The end of the book, it really, like, fucks with you how fucked up it is. So the end of the book, the kid grows up. He had left the Glanton gang, and he had become a better person, rejects fighting, rejects all this, and he goes into a bar. And in the bar is the judge. The judge is there, dressed in a suit, and he sits down, orders a drink, and he's drinking, and the judge walks up to him, and they have a conversation. And the judge tells him that they are there, like, it's destined for them to be there together. And the kid, now known as the man, argues that it's just coincidence. And the judge makes a philosophical argument about how nothing is coincidental, that there is a divine reason why everything happens. So then the kid is like, whatever, and he goes and he buys a prostitute. He goes and he has sex with the prostitute, does his thing, and then he leaves and he goes into a outhouse, and the judge is in the outhouse completely naked. And then it goes to a scene where these men go into the outhouse, and one guy's like, no, don't come in, and then the other people come in and look at what is in the outhouse, and it is the man, the kid, is dead in the outhouse and looked like he had been raped and murdered. The very end of the book is everybody is dancing inside the bar, and the judge is in the middle of the people dancing, and it says that he's huge, he doesn't have a shirt on, and he's dancing and he's wailing his arms around. And the end of the book goes like this: he never sleeps. He says that he'll never die. He dances in the light and in the shadow. He is a great favorite. He never sleeps, the judge. He is dancing. He says he'll never die. But yeah, you guys should definitely read this book. This book is awesome. The writing style is really weird too. He doesn't use parentheses in it, so it's kind of weird to read. Like right here. See that it doesn't use parentheses, and there's a lot of things that people would probably consider run-on sentences in here that are, so it's just a really weird style of writing where he breaks like almost every single rule of writing in this book. Like the storytelling is very weird, like stuff just happens. It feels like things just happen for no reason, but there is a deeper reason, it also feels like, It's hard to explain. You just have to read the book. Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This book is about a man who doesn't have a name. So he's just the man from the underground is what people call him. And the first part of the book is basically his journalings of his personal philosophy, I would say. And then the second part of the book is 3 stories in his life when he was a younger kid that kind of influenced his life to become the man who wrote that philosophy. And the 3, I can't remember how it goes, exactly what the order is, but I think that the first one is about, I'm fairly sure the first one is about this young kid who was 24. He's very shy and insecure, and on his way home from work, he always bumps into this like guard, and the guard never even knows who he is, recognizes him, doesn't give him the light of day ever. So he goes and buys a really nice coat. I think he even gets a loan for the coat so that the guard will recognize him or like acknowledge him. And he walks and bumps into the guard, and the guard still didn't acknowledge him. And he writes about how that was worse than if the man even made fun of him, because he didn't even feel acknowledged for being there. Then the next part in there is about how he goes to meet up with some colleagues at a bar, basically. They show up late, so he's already upset about that. And he ends up getting really drunk and kind of talking shit to them. And they end up making fun of him. And then they leave to go get some whores, I guess. And then he comes in and pays for a prostitute and ends up just talking to her and tells her that they should hang out later, and that's the end of that one. And then the next one in there is her coming and meeting up with him, and she said that she did it because she felt bad for him, basically. Then he gets really mad at that and yells at her and tells her that the only reason why he wants her there was because he wanted to feel superior over her, and he told her that she was stupid and all this stuff. And then he started crying, and that is the end of the book. It's a really weird book, but right when I started reading it, like the first paragraph just hooked me and I couldn't set it down. And it starts off like this. I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. I am a most unpleasant man. I think my liver is diseased. Then again, I don't know a thing about my illness. I'm not even sure what hurts. I'm not being treated and never have been. Although I respect both medicine and doctors, besides, I am extremely superstitious. Well, at least enough to respect medicine. I am sufficiently educated not to be superstitious, but I am anyways. No, gentlemen, it's out of spite that I don't wish to be treated. Now then, that's something you probably wouldn't understand. Well, I do. Of course, I won't really be able to explain to you precisely who will be hurt by my spite in this case. I know perfectly well that I can't possibly get even with doctors by refusing their treatment. I know better than anyone that all is going to hurt me alone and no one else. Even so, I refuse to be treated. It's out of spite. My liver hurts. Good. Let it hurt even more. And I don't know why, but that first paragraph of this book just really like caught my attention and brought me in. I don't know. You kind of, at least I kind of related to this man, even though you probably shouldn't relate to that. I did. I kind of understood what he was saying, that he didn't want to go get treatment out of spite. I sometimes feel that way, so I kind of related with the character, even though I feel like you probably shouldn't relate with the character. Fyodor Dostoevsky has a lot of books. This is the only one that I've read by him. I should read other ones. Like, he has Crime and Punishment, and all of them are, he really gets, from what I've heard, is that he really gets into the thoughts of his characters and writes how they feel and what they're thinking. And it's usually a very hurt person. So, I don't know. It's a good book. I'd suggest to read it. Dad jokes. The good, the bad, and the terrible. This book is just so good.